to drop all the indexes, then create an index on reputation column. So reputation is one of the columns in the user table. So I will run fast. I'm going to put a query hint. We have this out. By the way, if your max DOP is already set to 0, then you don't have to use this hint because it's going to use 0 anyway. Max equals 0. Alright. So I'm going to execute two queries. Same query. The only difference is that I'm filtering based on reputation equals to 1 here. Here, I'm filtering based on reputation equals to 2. Turn on execution plan, execute. It should run faster because I already created an index on reputation. Okay, let's look at the execution plan. So in the first one, I hope you guys can see. In the first one, SQL Server scanned the index, the cluster index, right? Scanned 2.4 million rows only to return 1 million. The second one, SQL Server did an indexing, scanned 1800 rows, read 1800 rows and returned the exact same number. And then because I'm selecting more columns, in this case, I'm selecting my the index used, which is NCH reputation, only has reputation column. But I'm selecting ID, age, creation date, and display name. And these columns are not even in the index. So you have to go look the other columns up. That's why we have KeyLookup here down here. But if SQL is reading from the cluster index, you don't have KeyLookup. Why? Because the cluster index is the table itself. And in that table, all the columns are present. So there's nothing to look up, everything is there. So there's what we call turning point. Is it turning point? I forgot. There's a concept used by SQL Server. The something point that helps you to decide whether to do index scan or do indexing and then do KeyLookup. Whichever one is less expensive, that's the one SQL Server will do, depending on how many records are coming out. So as you can see that the same query, different parameter for filtering, different execution plan. So what happens if we encapsulate this query in a stored procedure? So I'm going to run this. It already exists. I'm going to drop it. And I'm going to put that query in the stored procedure and then put a parameter here such that I can reuse this stored procedure by giving it any value for reputation. I'm not hard coding it. Tipping point, thank you. I'm not hard coding it anymore. I want to be able to use any value for reputation. Instead of saying reputation equals 1 or 2, I want to put a variable as reputation. So I'm putting this query in the stored procedure, execute, all done. Now, I want to execute this stored procedure by setting as reputation equals 1. And the second one, as reputation equals 2. This is like the exact same thing of what I did earlier. The only difference is this is running the stored procedure, while the other ones were running as just normal select statements, not in the stored procedure. So I'm going to execute this. Hope I have a execution plan. Alright, so let's look at the execution plan. Initially, when I ran them as select, SQL Server generated different plans for different parameters. Reputation equals 1 got the optimal plan for it. Reputation equals 2 got the optimal plan for it. But now they are in the stored procedure. See, they're getting the same plan. Because the first procedure. Remember, in this case, it was this situation. This was the first time this procedure was run. Using repetition equals 1. So SQL cached that plan and reused it when repetition equals 2. And that plan is not optimal for when repetition equals 2. Because it was supposed to do index seek and key lookup. But use it anyway. So that's the problem with parameter sniffing. And to explain that further, I'm going to run DBCT free cache to clear the cache, and then I'm going to swap the order of the queries. Instead of running repetition equals 1 first, I'm going to run repetition equals 2 first, then repetition equals 1 after. I'm going to run this guy so that I'm going to reuse those queries and those plans. So the plan cache is cleared. So now I swap them, 2 first and 1 after. So let's see what happens. I'm going to rush because of time. Alright, so, okay, it's done. Look at the plan now. Initially it was index card, index card. Now it's now index tick, and the second one also got index tick. Why? Because we ran for repetition equals 2 first. That plan was cached and we used for 1, even though that's not the best plan for 1. So that is parameter. So how do we solve this? There are multiple ways to solve parameter sniffing. I've highlighted it here, about 8 of them. Some are good, some are bad. Yeah. So, which one is my favorite because of time? It depends on the environment. These are the common ones. Number 2, using option recompile. What option recompile does is to tell SQL that every time this stop procedure is executed, generate a new plan. Don't use whatever plan that was cached. So that every parameter would get an optimal execution plan. But this is a problem, or could be a problem, if that stop procedure is executed multiple times in a day. Which means every time it's executed, SQL has to go to the CPU overhead of generating new plan. This can make your CPU to go up. So that's another problem of ICP. If you're running a stop procedure that has option recompile, then your CPU is going to be flying like Southwest Airlines. Yeah, so you want to use this when the stop procedure is executed just infrequently. So that's one. Then let's say if you put a local variable, but that doesn't help. That's not a good one. Another one that is good that I like is using dynamic SQL in your stop procedure. So dynamic SQL, the way dynamic SQL works is that every time the parameter changes, a new plan will be generated. But the problem with option recompile is if we generate a new plan every time that stop procedure is executed, even if we are using the same parameter. But dynamic SQL is smarter, that it will only generate a new plan if the parameter changes. So there are other ways to tackle or manage parameter sniffing. You can disable it at the query level. Disable at the query level. You can disable it at the database level too. That in this database, I don't want parameter sniffing. So if you come to your database, right click, you can use this SQL, you can use Go. Go to properties, go to options, go all the way down there. So I think by default it is on, but you can turn it off if you want. But it's not advised to turn it off. Yeah. And then you can also turn it off at the instance level by running this trace flag. So all the different ways by which you can fix parameter sniffing are already here in the script. So when you get a hold of this, try to run this and practice. If you have any questions, my contact is here. Feel free to reach out. Thank you.
said, we've been having very good feedback. And initially, we had an amount of time. We still have a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we want you to do another webinar, can we see our hands up?
That's a webinar online.
Online? Amazing. So, we're going to talk to you so that we can arrange that because this is something that's going to be valuable for us that are working and those that are also coming into the system. So, please, another round of applause for us. All right, question and Q&A. Okay, I see one hand already. We're going to make this brief also so we can have time.
Oh, sorry. I have a question when you were talking about SOS scheduling review.
Okay.
So I just had, which I don't know if you answered it, but after a certain time, you said that, let's say, a jury's been running for a certain time, and then basically yields whenever one that comes in. So my question is there order, is it always going to be, it's always going to yield to a new one, or a newer one, or is it maybe one that has certain precedents? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's going to be huge. Yeah, there's another. It's going to be huge to the query that is in the runnable status. The runnable status means is the next in line. For example, if you go to Starbucks, after you place your order, you have to yield, right? So who are you yielding for? Person right behind you.
Okay, so it's always going to be that order. Thank you. And then my last question is there a set time or a standard time that query will run before it yields?
4 milliseconds.
4
milliseconds. So either of two things. Either when it's on the CPU for 4 milliseconds straight, or even if it's less than 4 milliseconds, if it's waiting on a particular resource. Maybe it's waiting on the data page to be fetched from the disk, or it's waiting on the memory to be allocated to it because there's no available memory. As long as it's waiting on something and it's not up to 4 milliseconds, it has to yield.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Sinu. Any other question? Any question?
Yes, I have others.
Okay.
Okay, so I want going back to the audit. When you were referring to some of those issues, I think that the developers will cause, so when you make that observation, right? Okay, this query, we're having this issue because of all of the things that we said earlier. So, and those queries were not written by the database engineer, but you spotted it anyway. So after spotting it, and the are you the one that will go in to fix that, or you will then get, hey, this is what I'm noticing in this query. Go ahead and make these changes. Do you recommend, or do you go ahead and just write those things away?
Okay, thank you. Good question. For the most part, as DBAs, our job is to give recommendations. You don't make any changes until it's approved. Yours is just to make recommendations. This is found, this is how we can solve it, or this is how we can improve the performance. So usually before you make changes, you have to submit change requests, you have to go to CAR meeting and stuff, you have to approve it. So don't just go about just making change yourself because you feel like that's the right thing to do. Just sensitize them, if possible, call a meeting. These are your observations. I've noticed that we've been running queries with the Kintran without committing. We've been using leading white cards, stuff, and this is the implication. If possible, do a demo. I like to convince developers beyond reasonable doubt because that's the only way I see that they yeah. So convince them beyond reasonable doubts, sensitize them to know that okay, this is the problem you're having and this is the best way to solve it. And if it is approved, then you can now go and make those changes. I hope I answered your question.
Sure. Awesome. Another question. All right.
Yes. So in line with what Bertie asked you and what you answered, what if you're doing a code review? Are you saying you're going to fail that, or you're not going to approve that code because you feel it's going to cause a performance issue? What are the steps, or what's going to be your guideline for that?
Yeah, I would flag it. If I see it in a query, where I'm doing a query, I would flag it. and I'll give them recommendation on how to rewrite. So but the thing is, it's nothing personal. They may not listen to you, but trust me, you have done your job. The job is to see, identify it, and make it known to them. If they approve it, you make the change. If not, leave it as is. One day they will appreciate you. Yeah. When all that break loose, they will appreciate you. Oh, this person mentioned this.
So to add to that, to that's Sophia's question. So sometimes you don't have to necessarily say it per se. You can flag it, but I would not approve it if I know that this query is not well written and I have opportunity to be able to let the developer know. So I will flag it, let them know, hey, or send it back to the developers to review it and implement the change, and then send it back to me before I approve it. Because if it's not up to my standard, based on my recommendation, I'll let somebody else approve it. But I'll let them know. So you need to claim the name on that. And by the way, what that simply means is that in DevOps, there's a way, I don't know, it may not be applicable to everybody, but there's some environment where they will assign you, you will be an approver of code. So they will send it to you, you have to review the code and then approve it. Either you approve or you fail it or you flag it. So if you want to get more information, you can just review information on repos and basic of DevOps and DevOps stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sophie. Winifred, you have a question?
Thanks for sharing from your wealth of experience. So, from experience in performance tuning, can you share what has been an evolving challenge for you, or what has been a challenge you're currently facing in performance tuning? Thank you.
Honestly, I wish I was a developer for becoming a DBA. It would have made my query tuning skills be on my A game. Because developers, they write queries that are complicated. I mean, one of my philosophies of life is that simple is better than complex. Complex is better than complicated. I don't like complicated things. So, but they write complicated queries. But if I was a developer and I understand all those things, I would have probably been a better DBA. Just like Brentosa was a developer is now, so you can easily understand and write this query. So my challenge is I'm still trying to improve on my query tuning skills. Because query tuning could be really hard. Index tuning is easy. Server tuning is easy. But query tuning is hard and challenging. Yeah?
Can you tell us how you are trying to improve?
Learning, taking online courses. For the most part, I use DataCamp. I don't like that. I use DataCamp. They have a platform that is very, very interactive. They'll give you queries. They have a place where you can write query. When you make a mistake, it's going to point out the mistake. It's very, very interactive. And then Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, and stuff like that. And then one thing about, because SQL is a language, just like any other natural language, if you don't speak it, you're going to forget it. So you don't use it, you're probably just learning the thing. You're going to forget it. So you have to be in an environment that allows you to work with queries. So as you're learning, you're applying. You're learning, you're applying. You're learning. If you're just learning and not applying, you forget in a very short time. So learning and applying is really working.
Very great answer. Question, please.
I'm just actually following up the question you said about you asking that you should have development experience. Were there any languages or coding languages that you would recommend for us to learn on the side? Yes, in addition to SQL.
In relation to SQL?
Yes.
This SQL is an abstraction of SQL. So Microsoft just coined that of SQL. The only difference between SQL, which is for SQL Server, and SQL for other DBMS, such as MySQL and stuff, just little difference in syntax. But they are pretty much follow the same concept. So I wouldn't say I want to recommend something for you to go learn relations. Just learn SQL. But what has benefited me is that I learned other programming languages before I started learning SQL.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
But I wouldn't say you should go and learn those words.
You're not saying, you're just giving us ideas.
Oh, okay. So I learned MATLAB. I think MATLAB was the first, no, C#. I didn't learn that one. But MATLAB was the first major program.